Welcome to another episode of Delay the Decay. Today, my guest is Walt Taylor. Walt is a seasoned Christian business leader, energy consultant, and founder of GWT2 Energy, where he helps national restaurant and retail brands steward resources wisely and operate more efficiently. But Walt's most important work may be more personal. After years of sedentary and unintentional living, the decline and death of his father became a wake-up call that moved him from complacency to commitment. In his new book, Forging a Legacy, Walt challenges men to strengthen their faith, care for their bodies, build meaningful brotherhood while staying in the fight. Walt has been married 32 years. He has 3 grown children and 2 grandkids. Walt, welcome to Delay the Decay.
Hey, Dan, thank you very much. I think based on that, we can go ahead and wrap up the podcast now. That's a great intro.
There you go. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. And we're going to start with the question that I start all my guests with, and that is, what's one habit or discipline that you are incorporating into your life recently to help you move upwards and to the right?
Dan, let me answer that with 2, actually, if you don't mind. So first and
No.
foremost is going to be my relationship with Christ, you know, daily Bible study and daily prayer life and prayer walk. But 2, on a more physical level, is continuing to work on my diet. That's the part that I struggle with probably more than anything else. McDonald's seems to know my name very well, so I need to
Okay.
I need to continue to work on that. But I would say, secondarily, continue to work on a high protein, low carb diet.
Okay. I was going to ask you, what are those specifics? Are you counting macros, or how do you know if you're getting enough protein and too much carbs?
Yeah, so luckily enough, the Garmin app now lets you track nutrition in there. So I can put everything in one app. So I've got all my exercises and workouts and now nutrition all in one app. So I'm looking at macros there.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a great conversation because we've had a pre-podcast talk, and you are living very intentionally. You're living intentionally spiritually. You're living intentionally physically. Now I hear that you're living intentionally nutritionally as well. And we all know that intentional doesn't mean perfect. It means that we're all in process and we're trying to take that next right step. So we're going to talk a lot today about habits, and we're going to talk a lot about where you've come from. These are recent disciplines in your life, recent measured by years, not by decades. And so I know that there are people listening today that that have been living a sedentary lifestyle. So I know this is going to be inspiring, and we're going to talk a lot about why and what caused you to move in this direction. So before life started changing in 2024, you write in your book that you weren't simply out of shape, you were actually out of alignment. What did misalignment look like for you, Walt, in the everyday of life?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to talk about that from a just strict physical standpoint is, which leads to the other one, is that I was the type of person that went to bed late, got up just enough time to get up, get shower, and get to work. So everything was always rushed. It was because there was no discipline in my life as far as whether it was physical activity, whether it was eating, whether it was spiritual. It was, I did church and I did those things. I was at Bible study groups and other groups. So it wasn't like I was, apostate, right? So, but I do know that I wasn't living a disciplined life. And so probably the key thing for me that to answer that was just because I didn't physically, I wasn't where I needed to be. After a meal, I would go sit down in front of the couch, watch television, potentially fall asleep on the couch, then notice I've got to get up, get to bed, and then turn around and do it all again the next day. I lived in Atlanta several years, about 20 years. And if you've ever been there, the traffic can be bad. I was driving about 2.5 to 3 hours to work every day, back and forth, um, even though we were only going about 15 miles. So traffic in Atlanta is, really tough. And so, that contributed to some of that. And I'm sure anyone that lives in a similar area sees that. But one of the key things is that I use that as an excuse not to do the other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you think that there's people listening that go, "Oh yeah, like I've been there or I'm there now. And it could be a 3 hour commute. It could be um, three kids under the age of five, caring for them, and there's no time. Could be a busy job. Maybe it's two jobs that people are working. That is the reality at times, isn't it? Where life just fills in, and next thing you know, we're not exercising, we're not eating right, and we're not spending time with God.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. And having kids, growing up, with three. And my wife's a flight attendant, so she was gone on the weekends. She kept them during the week, and I kept them during the weekends. And she's been flying for 37 years, so this is a known lifestyle. But I think one of the things we did a good job of was not over um, over volunteering our kids is, I guess, a nice way to say it. During the fall we did one sport, during the spring we did one sport. We didn't do multiple sports, and we had them basically always in the same general area, so we weren't running around all over the place and having games on Sundays and all those things. So we were intentional about that and took time to do that. But I do know parents out there that kids sports manages almost their entire lifestyle. Everything wraps around those. And so I think that's one of the things that we did well. But as far as other men and what they're going through, I think you're definitely where you are in your life, whether it's with children, infants, grade school, high school, college, there's always going to be distractions. And one of the things I've mentioned before, and I don't think I mentioned in the book, but what we try to do is get traction in our lives. You need traction to be able to go somewhere. And the very thought of distraction is taking you off the traction. And so I don't know if we ever look at that word distraction as a compound word, but it is. It's, eliminating the traction in your life through distraction. And so, you do have to make disciplined decisions. Okay, I'm going to do Bible study. I'm going to be in prayer life. I'm going to get up, an hour earlier than I did before, or whatever those things are, which requires that you get to bed an hour earlier, because, as you know, then, rest is a key factor in everything that you do.
hmm So let's take look back at your life.
Mhm,
You made these changes a couple of years ago, and we're going to talk about the catalyst for those changes.
mhm.
But as you look back on your life when you're commuting in Atlanta, you've got kids in the house. Today, what would you speak to your younger self? The reality was you were distracted, but how could you have lived more intentionally? What something would have had to have given.
Yeah. So I think, that's a disciplined choice that you have to make. And I think that's where I was. I was not disciplined in my approach to life. And so even though, and I think my life is a good example. The reason I wrote the book is that you have to make a choice and say, look, I am going to get up earlier, and I am going to study the Bible, and I am going to be disciplined about getting to bed at a reasonable hour. You still can do the things with the children and do things with your wife and all those things, but you just have to be disciplined. We all make choices on what's important to us. So if prayer and Bible study are important to you, you'll make time for it. And what I found over time, um, looking back, is now with a greater understanding is think of it as water. If you don't drink water, your body misses it, and it wants it. And since Christ is, you know, our living water, if we don't spend time to Him, we must be thirsty for Him. If we don't discipline ourselves to actually go out and do those things, Bible study and brotherhood with others, then if we don't do that, eventually we get to a point where we don't miss it. So we've got to get to a point where we do miss it, just like with any other exercise.
hmm So could you have done that uh, back
I,
in Atlanta?
yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, I made time for other things, right? So, I mean,
hmm
I made time to watch a television show, or I made time to, do whatever it might have been, go out to eat or whatever. It's just a matter of choices, and then using your time wisely. Um, so yes, I think we can all find time, because it's just a matter of deciding what's more important. Is it more important to go to a game on the weekend or go golfing or whatever it is? Is that more important than doing an hour of Bible study? Can I delay something just an hour or even 30 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes to get
hmm
into the Word?
Yeah. Thank you for that. The reason I'm pushing so hard on that is that people are busy, and being busy is a choice. I interviewed a friend and a coach of mine, Elise Boggs, a while back. She's a coach out of San Diego, and she's getting ready to have her second baby. She's like a internationally known coach and speaker. Her first child is under two, and I go, "You've got to be overwhelmed." And she goes, "I'm not." She says, "I've chosen to not be overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed is a choice." And what she meant by that is that when we're overwhelmed, when we don't have, when we're not living a disciplined life, that's based on the choices we make. And it sounds, we want to have compassion for people because people are stuck with busy lives, but we also want them to hear this, that being stuck, being overwhelmed, living an undisciplined life spiritually and physically is, at the end of the day, is a choice. And so you can choose
Yeah,
another way.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that when, as you study the Bible, you learn that God wants to give you rest. He talks about that multiple times, that if you abide in him, he will give you rest. And so that's what we're looking for, right?
Well, yeah, I think so. And rest, he didn't just give it to you. It's a
Right.
choice. We have to order our life in such a way where we can rest, right? That's why he talks about the Sabbath so much. Let's talk about what changed the trajectory of your life. And it was your father's decline and eventual death in 2024. He asked you on his deathbed to lose weight and become more active. Tell us about your father and why that request became significant to you after he died.
Sure. And just to know, Dan, my wife asked me the same thing because she'd been asking me to do that for years. So Um, but so basically, I'm sure you probably had similar as you grow up with your father. And my dad was a captain in the Air Force, fought in Vietnam, um, came back, and then for most of his life, had a very physical job. He was a mechanic working on things, and later that changed. But I grew up with him doing physical labor, and I saw him and his strength and how you just think when you see your dad do things like that, you think that's got to be the strongest man alive, right? I mean, because you'll go try to do it behind him and you can't do it, and you see how tough it is and how hard he's working. And so that's how I grew up with my dad, seeing him work hard and do things. And then later in life, I think because he didn't take care of his body and he didn't do the things that he should as far as diet and exercise. I can remember talking to him and say, Dad, just walk around the neighborhood a couple of times a day or even once a day, just get out and be active. And he just wasn't really interested. And so over time, just like any other muscle, his heart didn't work as well. And he just couldn't get out and do the things he wanted to. And it really struck me as when he passed away, he was 2 months from seeing his great grandson. And so it really struck me as like, you know, he only died at 79. It's not like he was really, really, you know, old, but he couldn't really walk on his own. He had a hard time standing up. And things associated with that just physically were very difficult for him. And to know what I knew him to be, to see what he ended up being, and then him even stating that to me by saying, hey, you need to go out and do exercise and things like that. And so that's really what inspired me was, the realistic of here, I've watched this guy decay, sort of like what you're
Mm,
talking about, Dan, and I
mhm.
don't want to be that guy. And he doesn't want me to be that guy.
Yeah, yeah, that's watching our loved ones age and eventually die is it's hard, it's sad, and it can be motivating to live a different way. Your dad died at 79, Walt. What was the quality of his life leading up to age 79 and his death?
It was difficult. He had had heart surgery and just a year before. And even though his heart, all of his cardiograms and everything were better than mine, but physically, it took a lot out of him, and he just couldn't get around. And he had already had a hard time, even in his late 60s, with balance, going upstairs. And he always just kind of, shrugged it off as like, oh, I just misstepped. But you knew that he didn't just misstep, right? And so you start seeing those things. And then Just from driving with him, you could see that his reaction time wasn't as good as it used to be, and he tired quickly. I mean, we went to one of his hometown places he used to swim when he was growing younger or was younger, and he could barely get there, and it was only about a half-mile walk. And so similar things like that is, we went camping one time and we went on a little trail and it was not very long. He said, I really need to sit down and rest. And we ended up just turning around and going back. So
Yeah, yeah. So I would imagine it wasn't just simply your dad taking his last breath. It's you saw everything. You saw his lifestyle that led to that early death.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. He
Yeah.
actually lived with us the last 10 years of his life. So we saw it
Mm.
every day.
Well, thanks for sharing that. There's a doctor by the name of Dr. Peter Attia, Attia, and he's just an expert on healthy living, but he talks about health span versus lifespan, and I think it's really compelling. Even for the Christian, it's compelling because only God knows how long our days are going to be. Like we could be living as intentionally as we want, and when our days are up, our days are up. But the goal is that our lifespan, right? How many years we live, that the goal is that it would match our health span. And that way, like one day when the Lord decides to take us home, we die not limping through life for 10 years, but like living life to the full and then taking that last breath. Now, again, God's in control of that as well, but we're if we can do everything we can to be strong and eat well so that we can not live longer, God's in control of that, but live healthier so that we can serve others and where we can and love others and really enjoy the good gifts that God has given us. That's really what Delay the Decay is all about. And I know you talk about living longer in your book as well, but I think a stronger point that you make is to serve. How do you say it? Serve better, serve longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really why we're here, right? Is to serve
Right. Right.
in our gifts, and the longer we can do that, the greater impact that we're going to have on this world for God's glory and other people's good, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's serving is, ultimately what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be servants of Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your dad passed away at age 79, and you were getting this wake up call, this wake up call that you would rather not find yourself in that same place. You've got two grandkids that you want to enjoy. You had one with another one on the way, uh, but you initially dragged your feet after your father challenged you. What finally moved you from conviction to action?
Really, it was after we finished his affairs of his estate. I took a step back and said, okay, what's this all about? Is really what happened. And I picked up a book, and I probably had it a little while, but a book by Reagan Rose called Redeeming Productivity. And it's an easy read. But in Reagan's book, he talks about the power morning. And the power morning is prayer, organization, word, exercise, and reading. And the key to me in that is need to start stacking habits. So the first thing I did is, okay, I'm gonna get up earlier and I'm gonna pray. And then I'm going to also study the word. And then the next habit, exercise. Okay, and now I'm going to go out and walk a little bit around the neighborhood. And then the organization, you're looking at, what I've got planned for the day and what do I need to do to get prepared for that. And then reading. I was never a reader my entire life, but now I only read about 15 minutes a day, but I go through books really quickly, even though I read a short, just a short section of a book every day. By doing that every day, you can really get through some books. So for me, I'm at a point now where I can look back at my dad's life because I've gone through all of his estates and I've got all of his memorabilia and all the things and they're packed away and I've got his service flag and all that. It was a time that I was just a reflection and said, okay, I need to take this seriously.
Hmm. Yeah. And you initially started small.
Hmm.
Was that where where did you learn that from? Is that something that just came naturally to you? Because a lot of people come out of the gates when they get that conviction. They come out of the gates. Yeah, I'm going to run that marathon next week. I'm going to lift 150 pounds next week. I'm going to read through the entire Bible in a month, and then they fail and they don't do anything. Like you started small. First, how did you learn to start small and walk us through what that looked like in your life?
Sure. So because I kind of started on this later in life, I'd already experienced all those things you're talking about. I already experienced this.
Okay.
I'm jumping in with both feet, going all at it, and then you're into it for about a month and just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't maintain this. And it's because you try to go too hard too fast. And so it's the same thing that, every January we have these resolutions. We're going to do this, that, and the other. Instead of saying, you know what, let me set achievable goals. And, every small win is a win that I can celebrate. And so that's to me the key is to just walk around the block one day. The next day you take two walks around the block. The next day, or maybe it's the next week. It's just like when I was starting rucking, I started off with 20 pounds and only going about 2 miles. And then eventually got up to 45 pounds and 3.5 miles every morning. And that's someone, would say that's a lot. And I was like, actually, it's not when you start small and just kind of work your way up. And that was a year and a half to get there. It didn't happen overnight. I just gradually progressed. And exercise is the same way. You can't just pick up a 90-pound kettlebell and start swinging it around like it's nothing. You got to start with 20 pounds or something like that, and you work your way up. Your body will let you know when it's time to move. You need, progressive weightlifting is a key to being successful at it without injury. And so that's something I learned as I was reading books. I was learning about that. And, I did hire a personal trainer for about a year to kind of give me some encouragement and force discipline on me. But, every week we would follow up and say, what'd you do? And I'd have to send him videos of me working out. So that's, just like being accountable for anything else. You need someone to help you be accountable. And so that's what it is years of jumping in with both feet and I can do this and knowing that failed over and over again.
When you were convicted and you started setting out on this journey, did you have goals? Was it just the goal to do it every day? Did you have a weight loss goal? Did you have a amount of weight that you wanted to lift? Did you have a amount of a number of miles that you wanted to ruck? What did that look like for you?
So first and foremost, my first goal was to get up every morning and with prayer and with Bible study and make that a habit. Start there because to me that's the number one thing I needed to do. And once that becomes a habit, it's like, okay, what's the next habit I can, stack on top of that? And using Reagan's, Power Morning as a guide, it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to add reading to that. And so I started doing that. And then next, I'm going to look at my day every morning and see how that goes. And then, one of the key things that Reagan pointed out in his book is that you don't just pray randomly, right? You need a structure like, I'm going to pray about this on Mondays. I'm going to pray about this on Tuesdays. You need to have a prayer list of people that you need to pray for, and the ability to mark that off to show accomplishment. Again, showing accomplishments is what makes you, gives you encouragement to continue. So whether it's journaling or whatever, I do mine with a prayer list. And then the next part was okay. I can't just read just some passage in the Bible. So I happened to follow a gentleman on YouTube, Nate Salla with Wild's Disciple, and he had a very structured Bible study and about reading a passage, the same passage every day for 5 days in a row, and asking specific questions about that. And what I learned is a disciplined Bible study allows you to study the Bible better. Surprise, surprise, right? But so it was those things, and then exercise came along with that. But later, a few months later, after I'd been um, established some habits I was doing every day, and then I would bring on another one, and then another one, and then another one. And so I didn't necessarily have a specific weight when rucking. I maxed out at 45 because that was the uh, the largest rug plate I could purchase. So I guess this is where I'll max out. But that is I did look to see that's the way that firefighters use and things like that in training. Is like, okay, well that's sufficient for me. I don't need to be better than those guys are. And so similar with kettlebells, I've got about an 84-pound kettlebell. That might be as heavy as I ever go. I've got other weights below that, obviously. But I don't know if there's a use for me anyway to have anything higher. I could probably certainly swing something higher at this point because I've been doing it so long. But the point is to maintain fitness. I'm not trying to get, a six-pack abs and all those things. It's, have good cardio health, have good weight health, and that's the purpose, not to go out on the beach and look great.
Yeah, yeah, that's just a bonus if that happens.
Yeah.
Is so I'm curious on the kettlebell, do you swing Russian or American?
It'd be American. So,
So above the head
well, I get maybe I flipped
or
those.
eye
No,
level?
eye level. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just say 85-pound kettlebell overhead is a little reckless, maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that would be
Yeah,
reckless. No, it's just eye level for me.
yeah. And you've lost 40 pounds. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, congratulations. Is that was that a goal? Like I want to lose 40 pounds, or you just kind of knew when you got there that that's where you needed to level out?
Yeah, so actually the goal is to lose a little bit more. But my wife asked me to slow down. She said, "You've lost a lot of weight. I'm not sure if I want you to get thinner. I do think I definitely have some more pounds that I can get rid of." She was just like, "You're good. You don't need to continue to lose weight." And
Okay.
so I was like, "Okay, well, if she's comfortable with it, then I'm comfortable with it." But
Mhm.
in my mind, I'd like to get closer to 200.
Let's
So.
talk about your relationship with the Lord
Mhm.
in all that. Did your dad challenge you in that as well? When he was on his deathbed, he asked you to lose weight and become more active.
Mhm.
Did he say anything about like Walt? I want you to like. I'm not seeing that you have a relationship with the Lord. I want to encourage you to read the Bible or
Oh,
whatever.
no,
Uh,
no. He knew
okay,
I had a deep relationship with the Bible or with the Lord and read my Bible, but just he probably knew that I didn't do it intentionally. But
okay,
but he knew I had a strong heart for the Lord.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What needed to change? What flipped the switch spiritually for you? Like, how would you describe your relationship with uh, Christ pre 2024 and compare it to what it looks like today? How would you
Yeah.
compare it? And I'm not talking about activities
Mhm.
necessarily. I'm talking about your relationship.
Yeah. No, as I mentioned earlier, the idea that we need to have a real relationship, that he wants to know us on an intimate level. And so I thought through that and said, well, what does that mean? That means, how do I know my wife intimately outside of the physical part, right? How do I know her intimately? Well, I talk to her all the time. I get to know her. I spend time with her. And it's like, well, am I giving Christ that same opportunity to get to know me and me to get to know him? And it was a no, not to a similar level. And so that's that it really hit me. It's like, no, you really need to spend disciplined time in prayer and in Bible study. So it was a recognition of it. It was not where it needed to be. Faith was fine. Was my intimacy with Christ where it needed to be? No.
Yeah. So, how is your life different today? I know it's different in that your disciplines are different, but how has that impacted the way you live, the way you think, the way you treat others, all that?
Sure. It's probably one of the key differences is as I was doing this, getting more disciplined and things like that, I realized that in the Bible and in my heart, that God, that Jesus is my Lord. I realized I wasn't treating him like that. So I felt a real need to actually get down on a knee when I pray and subjugate myself to Christ and say, Lord, you are over my life. You are the one that is supposed to guide and direct me. And I need to give you the opportunity to do that by listening to you, by reading your word, and by having conversations with you. And really, that's how the book kind of came about. To be honest with you, Dan, is I was getting deeper in the word and being more open to his wisdom. And I remember specifically in my neighborhood a particular part where I had been reading a book called Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. I don't know if you've ever read that one, but it's a really pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all kinds of evolutionary talk and curse words in it. But the idea is that our culture has become comfortable. We don't go out and do things physically. And that's why I was reading the book. I was like, okay, what does this guy do to physically get active, and what is his life like? But as I was reading that book, I just kept sensing this is not Christ-like. I liked the concepts, but it can be told a much better way. And like I said, I was in a part of the neighborhood that I remember specifically, and it was almost audible. Like God said, "Well, what are you going to do about that, Walt?" And I was like, "Well, I don't." I was like, "Okay, I don't know this author."
That's good. Yeah, as you're talking, I think about the importance of knowing your why. If we don't have a compelling why to read the Bible, spend time in prayer, exercise, put healthier food in our mouth, the disciplines aren't going to stick. But if we have a compelling why that, as you did with your spiritual walk, and that's recognizing that Jesus isn't just your Savior, He's Lord. And what does that look like to submit to Him and to spend time with Him and get to know Him in a deeper way on a daily basis? It's the same thing with exercise. Um, Exercise will last day in, day out, week in, month in, year, decades if we have a compelling why. And it's to steward the bodies that God has given us and to be able to engage and love people. For me, it's to lead better, love deeper, and to live healthier. And that just keeps me going every day. And so it's good to think through the why.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things as I was writing the book, um, I started noticing people, men in church, right? And I started noticing how many would use the pew in front of them to stand up. And I was like, you know, that's not where God wants us to be. He wants us to be, to stand up on our own, to be physically able to do these things. Now, I'm not talking about somebody that's had knee surgery or, there's some physical ailment that's preventing to it. I'm talking about just a normal person like I was, requiring help just getting out of a pew. And when you start paying attention to yourself, you start seeing, well, how can I help others try to do this and get a visualization of what life could be like if they got more disciplined.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of people in the pews, how about pastors? How many pastors do you see that talk about discipline from the pulpit, but it's obvious that they're not super disciplined by what they put in their mouth and the way they exercise?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of pastors that do exercise, but it seems like there's a lot more that may not. So
That's
definitely, especially here
that's
in the
for sure.
South.
Yes. Hey, I'm curious. What do your kids think about this new journey? I'm sure they've noticed some differences in Dad. What do they make of it?
My daughter is just proud of me. And she was just, she got married a year ago, so I was well into this journey by then. And I could just tell that she was very happy about it. My oldest son and I go hiking. And so we actually went hiking a few weeks ago. And through a rough spot in the hiking, I finally said, "Hey, I'm going on," and kind of left him. And he was like, "Dad, I didn't even know you could do that." And I was like, part of it was I was so ready to go, but physically, I was able to say, I could do this. This is not a problem. And it was encouraging, just from a selfish standpoint, to be able to do that and say, I know this is a difficult terrain we're about to handle, but um, I know I can do it. And so that was encouraging. And then my youngest son, I think I've actually inspired him to start working out. He actually works out more than I do now. And he still lives with us, but he is getting stronger and very, I would say as disciplined, or maybe even more disciplined than me in that aspect.
Yeah, that's so good, Walt. Speaking of a why, the as the leader goes, the people behind him go, whether that be a pastor, whether it be a dad, whether it be a husband. Um, we just we just got back from New York City with my daughter, her husband, and their five kids, and from 15 down to 4. and we put on 25,000 steps one day. And just being able to do that with my grandkids and my daughter, and now right now we've got two of my other grandsons with us for a couple of days, and we want to be able to hike with our kids and our grandkids, and to see our kids not following in the footsteps of undisciplined life, but starting to see changes in dad. They're noticing, they see it, and I know they're proud of you. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And then
So,
my wife, being a flight attendant, she walks everywhere all the time. And we were on a vacation not too long ago in Rome, and I think we put in 20,000 steps one day. And I
yeah,
was just like, I couldn't have done this a couple of years ago. So
no,
it was enjoyable.
that's great. Well, good, well done. Well, let's talk about the book for a minute.
Hmm.
There's three central themes in your book, Forging a Legacy. It's
Hmm.
faith, fitness, and brotherhood.
Hmm.
Why we talked a little bit about faith, we talked about fitness, and there's brotherhood. Why do you believe these three belong together? Why?
Yeah, I think they most replicate Christ like disciplines. Christ was obviously very faithful. He was faithful to his family, the whole thing. But the brotherhood part of it, he went off alone often to go pray and things like that. But he also had 12 guys and even, a closer inner circle that he had of three. Um, and so if it was important to him, it has to be important to us. And so if we're going to mimic our lives after Christ, we have to do those things. And the book is kind of a day in the life of Christ is the way I think about it, because he would get up in the morning, he would pray and do those things. So um, it was important to be that way. And so for me, the other part of that was when I was in Atlanta, I had a group of Christian business leaders that I met with. It was a group called Iron Forums. They've grown a lot since I've left Atlanta. But we would get around and talk. The first part of we would almost meet for an entire day. And the first half of the day was a general discussion about whatever the topic may be, whether it's pornography or maybe maybe it is spiritual warfare or whatever it would be, a general topic of the day. But then the second half of the day, we'd be in a round table of 4 to 5 guys, and we would do a, um, a a task called a snapshot. And what the snapshot had was a list of things that you would have to prepare for every meeting. And it was the same thing. And so the first thing on there was rate your relationship with Christ 1 to 10. And you would share this with your people in your snapshot group. The second question was, what was rate your relationship with your wife 1 to 10? The next question was, have her rate you 1 to 10, which would get to force you to have conversations with your wife that you would normally have. As you can imagine, why am I only a 3? What happened here? um, and so the next one was the same thing with your kids, and then you go down multiple disciplines with your business, whether it was marketing, personnel, profits, whatever. And then the last part was always, what's the one burning issue that you had today? And what you learned going through that, obviously you learn a lot about the men that you're working with in that group. But what you often learn, what you think is your burning question, the men in the group would say, I don't think that was your burning question. I think your burning question is something else. And so that accountability portion, right? Um, and so meeting once a month, allowed you time to work on those things, and you come back and kind of give your progress report the next month. And so learning that you can lean on other people. One of the key things you find out is I'm not alone in this. But if you don't share these things, you're not transparent with others, then you don't get transparency back. Does that make sense? And so, you'll often think, I must have the worst kids in the world, because who else kids is doing all these things that my kids are doing? And then you find out, oh, my kids aren't so bad after all, after you learn a little bit. And then, whether it's kids or business or whatever it is, you learn that people are going through similar struggles or maybe even more difficult struggles than you are. And you learn how to encourage them. They encourage you. The whole iron sharpens iron process, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's helpful. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about. Let's talk a little more about the brotherhood. Like when you look out a year from now, 2 years from now, How would you like to see that aspect of forging a legacy change in your own life? Like, what's my sense is of the three, that's the one that you feel like you're not there yet. You haven't arrived spiritually or physically either, nor have I. But
Right.
it seems like the Brotherhood is the one that you're maybe need to work on more.
Yeah, I mean, I will say honestly, I moved back to my hometown and it's much smaller than Atlanta, obviously. And we don't have an iron forms here. And it's not the size of a place where you would because the demographics are just so much differently. But I do miss those iron forums experiences every month. And so, I found that going to Bible studies and things like that, that's great. And I communicate with a lot of guys and something the Lord has really placed on my heart is that I'm not interested in not only learning about the Bible and get to know these guys, I want to get them to know them more intimately. And so, what I'm struggling with right now is how do I either encourage a group of guys to be like that, or work within the church to develop those relationships? What's the best way to go about that? There's a few close guys that I've got that that inner circle, but I would like to be able to expand that and get more people realizing there's not only do you need to have that relationship with Christ, but you need that brotherhood of people that you can rely on, not just to help you move, right? But to help you. Who am I going to call if, I'm struggling with my marriage? And because I can't just call anybody, or I don't want to just call anybody. I want to call somebody that's not going to judge me. I want someone that's going to
Hmm.
walk with me through that. So that's where I'm working right now.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm glad you're thinking through that. It's just as men in general, it's not the easiest thing for us, and we do we're going to grow in environments where we're known, where people know our fears, they know our sin, they know our dreams. They will speak truth to us in love, and we get to do the same with them. And that it also takes time. Once you find that group of guys, it takes time to build trust. I feel like women can do it a little bit more easily than us guys.
Yeah, they use a little bit more words than we do, don't they?
They use a few more words than we do. Yeah, exactly. No doubt about it. Forging a legacy. What legacy do you want to leave behind, and why is that important?
Yeah, I think the key portion that I want to leave behind is that my kids understand how to live a life that is relational with Christ, and that I emulate that for them, and they can see that. I'll never be perfect at that, and they all know when they were growing up, I definitely wasn't perfect at that. But they do need to understand, what that process looks like and see that in me. And then the next part is don't be like I was as they were growing up and just kind of, dumb, fat, and happy, right? Get out and do physical activities and things like that. And that's why I go out and do those things with them now is to say, hey, my oldest is Walton, let's go hiking. My daughter and her husband, they like to go camping and go hiking together. And like I said, my youngest son enjoys working out. So these are activities that we're doing together where we can emulate that. And one of the key things on that, if you're one of the things I talk about in the book, it's important for us to go out in the wilderness with a few guys, whether that's actually in the woods itself or even just out. But, if you do that with your children, spend time with them alone on a camping trip or a hiking trip or something like that. It doesn't have to be those. Those are just the ones that I use, but you have times to have some intimate conversations because you don't have time to have those intimate conversations if their wife is there and the kids are there and or your wife is there and things like that. It's not that you can't have conversations, right? But you don't have long periods of silence that you can talk about and just really be, really pinpoint some of these things. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to do.
thank you. Throughout your book, you invite readers to picture the man that they want to be at age 80. And I use similar language. The language I use is that we're all becoming somebody. Who is it that you want to become? You're going to become somebody, but who is it that you picture in the future? And that's spiritually, it's relationally, it's all of that. When you picture Walt Taylor 20 years out, what do you see? Who do you see?
Yeah. I think I see basically me now, right? I
Mm,
mean, I'm better at it than I am now. But if I eat correctly and I, exercise effectively and I communicate with my kids like I should, um, if my heart is, physically, if my heart is where it's supposed to be, physically, spiritually, if my heart's where it's supposed to be, then, you know, at least in my mind, I think I will feel just like I feel now. Now I may have grayer hair and, can't really do 3.5 miles of rucking every morning, but the idea is that I will be just as excited and just as much fun with them to going out camping and going out hiking and doing things with the grandkids as I do now. And I think that's where I want to be, is that I may be a little slower at it, but I can still accomplish those things.
yeah. Walt, what I love about your story is that you spent most of your life not living intentionally. Although I think you sell yourself short a little bit because you talked about being intentional with decisions on kids' sports and stuff like that. But as far as in the two big categories of your relationship with the Lord and your relationship with your body, what I love about it is that you made a change later in life. And it's harder to make a change in your 50s, honestly, than it is in your 30s. So I commend you for that. And I hope it encourages others that are listening today that maybe they've been working hard. They've been raising a family, and now the kids are out of the house. Maybe they're getting ready to sell their business. Maybe they're getting ready to retire, and they're looking at themselves. And they might be pre-diabetic. They might be 60 pounds overweight. They know who Jesus is, but they haven't been stewarding the relationship with him. And the message that I get from you is that it's never too late, that you can start today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly the audience that I was thinking of when I was writing this book is, I was 56, 57 when I started. That's kind of later in life to get started on some of these things, it may seem like, but as long as you take it slow and understand, your limitations, just like with anything else, if you push yourself a little harder, be a little bit more disciplined, the next step will be easier. And the next thing you know, you are wrecking, 45 pounds, 3.5 miles every day, and it's not a big deal. But it takes time. One of the things a lot of us, we started off the podcast this way, is you can't just do it tomorrow. You've got to work your way up there, just like, as you lift weights. So thank you for noticing that in the book. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. As you think about your epitaph, maybe what your family is going to have on your tombstone one day, what do you hope that they they write about you or that they say about you as they memorialize you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, although it is to me, it may not be to them, that I was a man of God and I taught them how to be the same.
Boom, short and sweet. What a great legacy that will be, and that you are building already. Walt, it's been a joy to have you on the show. I'm just really happy for you. Might even say I'm proud of you for making that change late in life. And it's having a trickle down effect. This book will have a trickle down effect. It's already having a trickle down effect on your kids, and I'm sure other people that have known you for years. So nice work. Uh, continue. Continue it. Our motto here on Delay the Decay is it's about direction, not perfection. If we focus on perfection, we're never going to take that next right step. So if people want to pick up the book, Forging a Legacy, can they find it on Amazon?
They can find it on Amazon, both paperback and Audible, and uh, what's the Kindle as well. So all those.
Okay, great. And if people want to follow you, where can they find you? Are you on social media?
No, I'm not a social media person. That's pretty intentional. But they can go to my website. It's forgingalegacy.org.
Thank you, Walt, for being my guest and Delay the Decay audience. It's great to be with you for another week. And do remember, it's about living a life of direction. Take the next right step up into the right and enjoy this life, this good life that God has given us. It's not without trials, it's not without bumps, but we have a good King. We have a good God who gives good gifts. And we can enjoy this relationship when we intentionally spend time with Him in His Word and in prayer. and steward all the other gifts that He's given us. So we'll see you and talk to you next week.